the world with rage.
Morning
Or
from
perhaps
my patio in North Carolina, and today we're going to talk about chapter 30 in this album, multi-album journey. And today's song is called "Lady Elm in a Courtyard." Yeah. Um, so for today, we're drinking Highlands Brewery, their oatmeal porter. Um, pretty pretty solid. It's, I don't know, been a couple of years since I've had a sip of any of it. It's kind of malty, but not in a bad way at all. Obviously has like oatmeal hints to it. Yeah, it's not bad. All right. So before we talk about Lady Elm in a Courtyard, I wanted to add one thing that I overlooked in my notes yesterday, and that is in chapter 28, Godless Man. Um, I wanted to do something a little different with it, like instrumentation wise. Because, like, originally I thought it was just going to be a segue track, kind of like the segue tracks in uh, Volume 1. You know, there was like four of them, I believe. Yeah, four of them in there that were just, like light harmonies in the background, or, more like ethereal guitar effects driven sort of stuff. And I thought, it was going to be similar to that. So I added two weird instruments, one being a recorder flute, like literally the white little plastic recorder flute that I played in elementary school, like fourth or fifth grade. Um, Still have it. I don't know where it is right this second, but it's somewhere. But yeah, like nearly 30 years later, I still have the thing somewhere. So, I recorded a quick track with it, just hitting these like weird notes because I don't remember how to play the thing really at all. Um, and like putting really heavy reverb on it and low in the mix, so it kind of sounds more like, I don't know, like some sort of reverberating distortion or feedback loop sort of thing, coming from like guitar amps and stuff like that. And then the other instrument that I added to number 28 was, I don't know exactly what the name of the instrument is. It's basically a toy piano, like an antique toy piano. So like my mom has this antique toy piano thing, but it's, I guess, technically not a piano. I mean, it's like really small. I mean, it's meant to be like some little like 5-year-old kid's toy or something, back like 100 years ago. Um, but I mean, it looks like a piano. You hit the keys like any piano. It's even got the black keys and all that. But I guess instead of strings, it has like, I guess, like metal planks that hit the notes, not unlike tuning fork sort of thing. So I guess technically it's more percussive in nature, um, more like a piano with metal xylophone kind of plates in it or whatever. But I actually like took like post-it note scraps and like numbered out a sequence of stuff to hit on it, so that I wasn't just um, like during the verses, I guess, just hitting random notes or whatever. Like there was actual uh, instrumentation to it, but it's still very low in the mix, very highly reverberated. Um, and yeah, that was basically that. And with that song in particular, once I started coming up with the drum tracks for it, like I didn't want to redo the recorder flute or the piano or any of that stuff. So what I ended up doing was just quantizing. Quantizing um, the parts so they would fit, and it's low enough in the mix that it wouldn't really be much of a problem anyway. So that was that, and then along with that, like I said, I figured it was going to be a segue track, and once I started putting the drums in with it, it became clear to me, no, this is like an actual song. So that I made it, into a song. I mean, I guess the not really choruses, not really bridges. I mean, it's not like a typical song structure. Maybe it's a verse. I don't know. It's more spoken word, and doubled some vocal tracks with it, and did some like weird pitch shifting sort of stuff to give it, this like ominous feel to it. Um, so yeah, that was that track, and yeah, that's mainly what I wanted to talk about before getting into Lady Elm in a Courtyard. So first off with chapter 30, unlike every other song on this album, this one came much later, much later. I basically recorded it within like a 2 or 3 week span this past summer. Um, it was, I think I began it like in, I want to say early June. Sounds about right. Um, Basically, musically, I guess, I was thinking, weeks leading up to that point about how cool it would be to record some like wind chimes, late at night or whatever. And I figured, I would do it later for another album, another, recording, another song. But what happened was there was too much of an abruption between progressions or what the hell's the song name? Like I wrote the damn song and I can't even remember. Progressions of profession, professions of progression, professions of progression. Sounds right. Um, Chapter 29. Um, the Converge ripoff. That song. There was of too much of a gap in my mind between that song and then I guess tomorrow's song. Um, there wasn't a whole lot bridging it, and that started to really bother me. Um, and I didn't initially plan on adding Lady Elm in a Courtyard, but it just started to fester like this is a logical issue, a story issue, and there needed to be some kind of bridge. Um, because the subject matter just seemed too abrupt um, to me. And so, like, it hit me, this is what I need to do. And so, one like Friday night, I recorded some wind chimes, um, which right above here, there's a set of wind chimes. You probably hear it in the background. But it wasn't those, it was some wind chimes out front that I think are very beautifully sounding. Um, so I recorded those, one night with, my microphone and, basically my laptop, just sort of like sitting there in a chair or something, and tried to wait so that there weren't cars or anything like that driving back, since it was like, I don't know, 11:30 at night sort of thing on a Friday night, which like at the end, or I think it was at the end and at near the beginning of the song, there was like the sound of a car driving by, because like I ended up turning the gain up on the microphone really high, so it caught a lot of like background noise too, which I'd probably do that a little differently now, but I think it sounds cool personally, like isolating the track or whatever, listening to it. Um, and then I made a timed loop based off of the metronome that I use to make the drum parts. Um, just a loop of the uh, wind chimes playing over and over again. Um, it's on a 7 to 10 second, you know, loop sort of thing that repeats like 10 times or something like that. So um, that's pretty much uh, what I structured the entire song off of, and the music and everything, and recorded the vocals. The beginning part is just spoken word, me reading basically a poem, and then once the music really comes in, this like highly distorted yet ethereal kind of modulation that I've used before in other songs. The lyrics come in that part. From there on, it's basically another character, this person named Lady Elm speaking, and since she is a female character, I didn't want to I didn't want to use my own voice. I mean, obviously I did, but like I wanted to do something different with it, not like a scream or a growl or anything. So I did some pitch shifting, and then I think I recorded those vocals twice. Well, once, but like with two different microphones going at the same time, and one of them's like my normal mic, and did some pitch shifting and stuff with that particular track. Like up the pitch by, I don't know, 4 or 5 half steps, something like that. But then the other microphone was actually going through my guitar processor, and I designed an effect chain specifically for that vocal, with different delays and further like pitch shifting. Like honestly, it by itself, it sounds terrible. But with the other track, it, I guess, works. I guess. I wish I could do it a little differently now, but honestly, I don't have like the software or the resources to get something that sounds much better than it does. Plus, I didn't necessarily want it to be like high in the mix or like basically I wanted it to have a quality to it while like all the rest of the music is going, that it the vocal performance itself becomes more of an instrumentation to itself than just, you know, lyrics or reading something off, you know. Like, I just figure, hey, you know, hopefully it fills in some space, it sounds interesting, it hits some, you know, interesting harmonies by chance, and that's basically that. Like, if you really want to understand what's being said, then follow along with like the lyric sheets kind of thing. But it really, to me, needed to sound more musical and ethereal than just, you know, your run-of-the-mill kind of vocal take. So the story going on in this song is that, you know, at some point after leaving this like temple area, after this, you know, weird thing has happened where these statues fall over and get destroyed, the protagonist character wanders around in this prison gulag city like structure, whatever you want to call it, and he's just angry and pissed off, and just, to me, he is grappling with being in this prison itself. Like, he's, like I've said before, like, he had his breakdown, he's somehow put his psyche back together, but, you know, he's still just angry. And so what happens is, in his wandering, he finds this place in the prison that he's never seen before. And like I've said, it's a massive prison. So, I mean, there's lots of little nooks and crannies to explore. But what he finds instead is an open courtyard that's walled off between, I guess, like 4 different buildings that is part of this massive prison. So he's in this courtyard, and in the process, a woman walks up to him, and she followed him from the temple area. She was watching him and saw everything, and she followed him to speak to him and to speak life to him, to calm him down. And, you know, they're inside this courtyard late at night, and, you know, there's like wind chimes, there's, you know, a tree growing there. It's actually a really nice courtyard. Think of something like you've maybe seen in a picture, you know, between buildings in your own city, like downtown, where I live in Greensboro. There are small courtyards that you'll find in between buildings, or like kind of tucked to like in between, but like behind buildings. That if it's like townhouses or some sort of like apartment sort of thing, like I've walked into some of those places, or like think of like a congregational church yard. There's I think it's a Lutheran church that's downtown that I visited it years and years and years ago. But it has a courtyard, kind of between some buildings in the back of the church, if I remember correctly. There's like a Methodist church downtown that has a courtyard. Or, you could think of, I don't know, like someplace somewhere in Italy or something, something you've seen in a movie. Like it's a nice, quiet, kind of secluded spot, but it's peaceful, it's well kept, it's clean. And for the first time since he's been put in this prison, it reminds him that there is a world outside of it that is normal, that isn't ugly and messed up and decrepit. So he's talks with her, and at the end she leaves him to be alone and to gather his thoughts and to find peace. And she recognizes that there are guards coming, and they're going to try to track him down. And she says, they're going to find you, but for now I'm going to lead them away so that you can be alone and so that you can have this moment of peace and commune with God, basically. And so that's the story behind, or within this song. But what this song means to me, besides being, when I said like I needed something to bridge basically chapter 29 and chapter 31 so that it wasn't so abrupt, I wanted it to kind of show an inner, or indirectly show like an inner kind of change within the protagonist. That, okay, in 28 and 29 he's angry, kind of being judgmental, whatever. And this woman named Lady Elm, who is, this like regal kind of character. I mean, I think it's safe to assume that if her first name is Lady, that is actually as a title, that she has some sort of monarchical connection within this particular literary world. And if she is like some form of royalty, it would be safe to assume that she's some sort of political prisoner as well. But I wanted it to be a positive example, and like she tells him, like, don't worry about that stuff in the temple. Those gods, their gods, they mean nothing to us. They pose no threat to us or to God, to the real God. And she cuts through to the chase that, he's been through trauma. And so, like, that's why he's really angry. Like, I think back to, and then I wouldn't say this had anything to do with trauma at all. But like as an example that I can think of, when I was 17 years old, high school, um, church I was going to, um, part of the youth group and everything. And long story short, I had this dream, this like very vivid dream that, it was like the first time anything like this had happened in my life. And it was a very disturbing dream. And it involved two, two pastoral leaders that I knew at the time. And I didn't know what to do with it initially. Was talking to a minister I was close to at the time about it, and it sort of hit me in conversation with them to write this dream down as a short story and give it to these people. Um, at the time, I thought it was meant to be kind of like a prophetic warning of sorts. Um, and I did that, slipped it to to one of the people that it dealt with, and I found out like a week or so later that it wasn't received very well at all. Initially, it sounded like the people that it involved got very upset about it, and my youth pastor at the time sat me down and talked things through with me, and said everything was okay and all. Um, Apparently, it was mentioned a couple of years later, kind of not like specifically, but like my dad was telling me about it. Um, that it was briefly discussed in a sermon once, from someone in the church, and from the way it sounded, and like my name was never brought up or anything, but like my dad told me like it was obviously about, like it was obviously referring to me because of like simple details of it was a short story about a dream, and it was written by a young teenager in the church, years before. And from the way it sounded, was that it had actually leaked out to a number of different people in the church. Somehow, I don't know how. I never got details about it. I'm not even worried about any of that. Even when my dad told me that stuff a couple of years later, it was just kind of like, wow, that's kind of crazy, sort of thing. I wasn't really affected by it by that point. But after after I initially found out that it wasn't received well, and that some people were, really offended and kind of maybe even hurt over the dream, which, as a side note, uh, years and years later, apparently everything that it dealt with, maybe kind of sort of came to pass in one way or another. Maybe not to the degree that was in the dream and the short story, but it might actually like kind of came true, and that kind of makes me sad. But it is what it is. But anyway, I only mention this stuff because after I was sat down with my youth pastor, I had a lot of guilt from it, and I carried it for, I don't know, a month or two. And in that month or two span of time, I became extremely religious and angry and judgmental towards people. I just didn't vocalize it. I just, like a turtle or something, just withdrew into my shell and suffered through it privately. And in the meantime, I was like reading a lot of Bible. Um, I mean, reading for like a couple of hours every day, sort of thing, and not like hanging out with people or talking with my friends or anything like that. It's just like I'd just sit there and watch TV, you know, if I got home from school, or read the Bible or whatever on the bus or in my bed or whatever. It was just for a couple of months, just feeling really guilty and filled with shame and stuff like that from the way things had turned out. And luckily for me, my youth pastor noticed something wasn't right, and he pulled me aside into his office after church one night and sat down and was just like, you know, what's wrong? You know, you haven't been yourself lately, like something's up. And you know, I told him, you know, why, and just the way I felt about that whole situation. And you know, he doubly assured me that everything was okay and stuff like that. So when I say, which by the way, like that youth pastor sat down, you know, told me everything was okay, and then like proceeded to pray for me, and you know, like literally felt set free, you know, after I walked out of his office, and I felt like myself again, like I could cut up and hang out with my friends and stuff like that. So I mean, I say this because it kind of serves as an example of what's going on with the protagonist in chapter 28 and 29. And so like this lady Elm stepping in has the same kind of effect. Like I probably wrote this kind of with that in the back of my mind, but really who this song is about, at least in this song, which the Lady Elm character, she is going to come up again later on, not in this album, not even the next album, but in Volume 5. Spoiler alert. Yes, I'm working on Volume 5 right now. It's awesome. But she's going to become very prominent in Volume 5. And at least in this particular song, she completely 100% represents my deceased mentor, who her name was Karen, which it's weird when people use Karen as like a derogatory title or whatever for, you know, these like entitled middle-aged women or whatever, nowadays. Like I get it, but at the same time it's like, well, my mentor, she wasn't like that, you know. She was extremely opinionated, and you know, she could get in some heated arguments with, I mean, she did get in heated arguments with me, but at the end of the day, like, I guess it is direct examples. Um, Back when she was still alive and still getting around and everything, there were a couple of times when she willingly became a scapegoat to make things a little easier on me because she knew that I was having a hard time dealing with a lot of the adversities and just the the stress of dealing with the woman I wanted to marry. And so she became a scapegoat a couple of times, to just to help relieve stress. Um, there was there was a time when she went wrote something out very academic based because it was her argument that she made was based on a very influential book that I read after she passed away, but a book called The Figure of Beatrice. It's about Dante Alighieri and all of his work, dealing with this Beatrice character, and she used like basically the foreword of that book, um, as a defense for me, um, to say, on the record to everybody, look, you may not like what Ben had to say, but like I agree with him. I think he did something remarkable and did something important. And she was willing to take a hit for me, um, because I know like there was probably people who read her defense on my behalf, and I didn't ask her to do it. She just did it because she wanted to. I'm sure there were people that were ticked off with her, but like she was willing to take the hit, because she believed in me. I remember it was after church one day. A group of us were talking with her, and she was asking, questions and recommendations and all, because in a lot of ways she was an elder for us, even though like she never had the title or anything. Um, she was very pastoral in her way, and she was a glue keeping a lot of people and a lot of things together. Like I can see that more now. But anyway, like she was asking a bunch of questions, and I was scared, and I was tired. My brain was fried in the conversation. I was just standing back. I didn't want to get involved because I felt like I had already said my piece leading up to that moment, those months or even years at that point. And just thinking like, even if I say what I want to say, like it's probably going to piss somebody off, and it's not going to do any good anyway. Like I'm stressed, I'm scared of what how bad things were starting to look at that point. And I just wanted to take a step back. But someone else in the room chimed up and turned to me, and they wanted to hear what I had to say. And initially, like I resisted it, didn't want to get involved, but they just kept pushing it to the point where I felt like I was like being like hit up against the ropes, kind of, so to speak. And it became kind of a heated argument, and I think I got pretty loud and was kind of yelling and all. And then, like, I had had enough. And I just stormed out of the room and walked outside, um, grabbed some cigarettes from my car and started, like, staring off past, like, this chain link fence in front of the church to some other buildings. And I was just, like, zoning out, just trying to, like, rebalance myself and find some respite from that moment. So I don't know, like 10, 15 minutes later, I walked back inside, like I'd settled down, everything was cool again. And my mentor, Karen, turned to me when she saw me walk in through the door and came up to me and just threw her arms around me, and she said, "I thought you were gone. I thought you had left for good." And I was like, "What the hell are you talking about? Like, I'm not going anywhere." Like, I just got really frustrated, really angry, really, like I needed a moment alone. Like, it happens often, but like I especially needed it, and I walked outside like that's all that was. And she was like, "No, you don't understand. I've never seen you like that before. I thought I had lost you. I thought I would never see you again. Please don't go. Like, please don't give up on us." And I was like, "I'm not going anywhere." Like, and I thought it was crazy in the moment, but like at the same time I was like, holy shit, like she really cares about me, you know? So it's been like 6 years since she passed away, but it still hurts sometimes, you know? I think about her a lot. I miss her. She was 65 when she passed away, um, from cancer. Cancer's a motherfucker. Sorry if that offends you, but it is. That's what I wanted to do in this song, to honor her. So, it's me as the main character starting out, just talking about the cynicism and the anger and just the darkness in his eyes. And then he finds this woman and she speaks real life to him, talks about trees and stuff like that, as metaphors, which is literally what Karen did. I can't really take credit for, I don't know, 40 to 50% of the song, because when I was writing the lyrics, I could do my part just fine, but when I got to her section, I didn't know what the hell to say. So what I did was I went into, like my email, Facebook Messenger, whatever, and went into the messages that Karen and I had, because I never deleted any of them. And I started scrolling backwards because I wanted to find something that would inspire me to write in her voice. And as I was scrolling, it only took me like 2 or 3 minutes and I read this like one paragraph or whatever that she wrote me, and I was like, just started tearing up and all, and I was like, that's it. And 90% of that 40, 50%, however much it ends up being, was basically her exact words. I did make a few subtle changes. There were some typos, and I think I changed maybe a couple of words or phrasings, but for the most part, it's verbatim what she said. Um, and I know her; she wouldn't mind me. She'd feel honored, that I put it in here. But she wrote it to me. Um, it was one of the last full email correspondences we had before she passed away. It was about a month and a half before she passed away. Um, and the whole thing was in reference to something I had done as a gift for the woman I wanted to marry. Um, and that was kind of the context behind it. Like, I'd done this gift um, for the holidays, and she had, found out about it or whatever, and was commenting about how it was a good thing, and then saying all this stuff. And so, like, a lot of the initial, like, 6 or 7 lines of where she starts singing in the song was actually written by me. But from what I actually copied from that email from Karen, her words start at, "It brings the first smile I've had all day." It was in reference to something I had said that she thought was profound about, like, stress and suffering. And those, like, 7 or 8, well, probably like 8 or 9 lines, ending at feeding the seedling of renewal. So yeah, it brings the first smile through the seedling of renewal. That was from the email, and then everything else was mine. So yeah, that's the story behind the song. I wanted to write something from her voice, which literally was kind of her voice, at least literary. And she was an extremely smart woman, highly educated, and she had like her master's in English or something like that. Maybe, I don't remember, but I know she had studied English and done a lot of editing and whatnot over the years. So she was a kindred spirit. Loved literary work and stuff like that, much like me, and had a creative spark to her, though. Like, she didn't do a whole lot of like writing or poetry on her own. But yeah, this had to be the bridge to the next song from the previous two, because even though, like, chapter 28 and 29 are very kind of angry and bitter and whatnot. In reality, it was me being very academic. Like I said, I did quite a little bit of research into these different deities and how it tied into Old Testament stuff, especially. And it was just me trying to intellectually deal with this stuff, like a few weeks after I found out that the woman I wanted to marry had married some other dude. And so it was kind of like, in reality, it was a disassociation between how I really felt about the situation and what I had, gone through, a type of trauma of sorts. And so I felt like this song, and specifically in Karen's voice, was necessary to bridge it forward without it just sounding super bitter, whatever. Like, it had to bring some balance to everything and be something positive and encouraging to the character, because that's just the kind of person Karen is. Like, if there really was a problem and she picked up on it, like, she would do something about it too. Like, she didn't want to see anybody suffer, and she knew, in our numerous conversations, that there was little that she could do to make my stress and anxiety and suffering end. But just her being there and being willing to talk through a lot of that stuff, it meant the world. Looking back now, I can say that. Maybe that's the moral of the story behind this song, is that it doesn't take someone to have answers all the time, because a lot of times there aren't exactly answers, or there aren't exactly things that can be done to fix a situation. We only have so much power, and we're just limited as people. But simply caring, being willing to talk through stuff, and be an encourager, that can be enough to get somebody through some tough shit, to help somebody just keep going. And it can feed somebody to find inner strength within themselves too. It can encourage somebody so that they're able to actually stand on their own 2 feet when the time comes. That, I guess, is the moral of the story. So to end today, I just want to say cheers to my friend Karen. I know she's in a better place. She's no longer suffering at all. But I miss her, and I do wish a lot of times I could just sit down with her and talk and ask her, for advice and all, because, she was a very profound, incredible woman, And I think a lot of us didn't completely realize that till she was gone, unfortunately. So Anyway, cheers.